A little bit of a slower card. Really wasn't a fan of the main event. Aspen Ladd is ranked, I want to say, third in the bantamweight division. Went up to 145 pounds. Lost a decision. Kind of a slower fight. She really didn't make the technical changes that I would like to see her make throughout the fight. She sort of stuck with the same game plan. And one thing about when you go up in weight, the technique has to be there. So if you're winning off of size and you go up and the technique's not there, you're just going to get outclassed. If you're going to be a fighter who switches division, you have to be well-rounded everywhere. I think on the feet, she was really flat-footed. Dumont really didn't do anything that was too crazy. All she did was jab her for, I want to say, the whole duration of the fight. Ladd was flat-footed, and that was about it. Dumont stood real bladed, so I was thinking maybe Ladd could start throwing more leg kicks. She really didn't have a good way to enter into the striking with Dumont. That was her biggest problem. She did not know how to enter into striker range with Dumont. Sort of a boring main event. As far as the co-main, we had Arlovski versus Felipe. I thought that should have been the main event because the way those boys were fighting, Arlovski was looking like the best guy to beat Cyril Gane as far as movement. Would he beat Cyril Gane? No, because he'd probably gas out. But as far as movement for a heavyweight, for a guy who's been fighting 20 years, for a guy who's in his 40s, I want to say Arlovski's around 42. He was moving better than these young guns. Had great footwork, light on his toes, good foot and good head movement. Kept his eyes on his opponent the whole time. Very technical. Felipe didn't really know what to do with Arlovski for the first half of the fight until he got tired. I will say Felipe did a good job of making the fight grimy and dirty. That's about it. But I want to say that was the more interesting of the co-main and the main. Arlovski looked really good shot selection. I think he could give a couple guys a tough run. I don't really see him as a gatekeeper. He's improving a lot. He's down at ATT, I believe, and he looks good for a guy who's 42, and he comes in shape. This one was, I want to say, was the best fight on the card. Jim Miller versus Gonzalez. Jim Miller was sniping with that left hand. Gonzalez was a little bit more sloppy in his stand-up. Gonzalez made a mistake. He switched into southpaw. He kept switching the stances. He was switching between southpaw and orthodox. He switched too many times. Switched with his hands down. Jim Miller sniping with the left when Gonzalez landed, and Jim Miller just shut his lights out. That was a great knockout by Jim Miller, another guy who's been in UFC for a long time. I think he beat Cowboy for the most UFC appearances. As I'm looking through what I got written down here as far as the fights, my favorite fight on the card was probably, besides those two, is the Nunes versus Carnelossi fight. I want to say they're strawweights, but one thing that did impress me is mostly Nunes for being a newer fighter. She had very good footwork, and I love to see, especially at these lower levels, fighters with good skill. She was able to fight moving backwards, even though she did lose. She showed a lot of promise, fighting off her back foot, moving backwards. Those are all things that you could really build upon. And I think that's one thing that coaches need to harp on a little bit more is that technique. Those are the fights that stood out to me from this card. There's a bunch of fights, but they're a little bit slower, so nothing too crazy.
All right, that's it.